Okay guys, let's get right into the stock market technical analysis. I want to get this video out while the market's just opening up this morning, point a couple things out, and really what we're looking for. So as we get into the charts, we'll start out with tech because obviously we're kind of in the middle of the big tech earnings. So far we've got Microsoft, Google, Meta, and I'm not sure which other one. There was I think that's it. That is reported, and then we have and obviously Tesla. We have Amazon reporting after the bell today, and then we have Apple next week. So we're still in the middle of things. It's the battle has not been decided. I know on big up days it feels extremely bullish, but that doesn't mean it's going to continue. And again, if you look at the price action, really the Nasdaq futures here, I mean we've virtually gone nowhere for almost a month now, really over a month. We basically have been stuck in this range. Now we started to break down out of the range. Here's the top of the range that I have. It's about 13,208 on the Nasdaq futures, and then the bottom of the range it's kind of a zone. There's multiple tags of it, anywhere from 12,976 down to about 12,954. And basically, we had a breakout to the upside. Again, at this moment in time, everybody was extremely bullish because the price action was breaking out. And yet that was really the near-term high before a breakdown. So that was a false breakout, and then we recovered back within the range. And then once that happened, I said, okay, it's very likely we're heading to the bottom of the range. We did that. That was about it's not a huge range, but that's about a 2% drop or so. And then recently we broke to the bottom of the range right here, started to break down, and we've now pretty definitively, recovered that range again. We're back in the range. So false breakout on the upside, and I talked about this in the earlier video. Now we have a false breakdown. The volatility continues. All right, there's no real clear indication which way this range wants to break for the next move, for the next trend, basically. So we're just kind of chopping within this range. Little whip to the upside, fake out. Little whip to the downside, fake out. And it's just, bulls and bears in this trading range and where we're at are getting chopped up. So just the nature of it. That's why I think it, from my perspective, it makes sense to kind of just let the battle play out. And then once we really understand where things are going, we'll have a definitive understanding of the next trend. Now, because because we had this false breakdown, I think it's very likely we're heading to the top of the range now. False breakdowns usually, anytime you have a false move, you have a range, usually you head to the opposite end of that range. So a little more upside here, probably 13,208 or so, and then we'll likely close out the day. It could do it today for sure. And if we close the day out right up in here, then that means we'll go into the close with Amazon reporting, and then we'll be at resistance. So again, every single time we've been at this resistance in the past, we've had sell-off. So we're just going to continue to go at that until something changes. And triple Qs, when we look at that one, the top of the range on this is, I think it's right up in here, about 319.35. On the hourly chart. If I look at the daily, rolling to the daily, we definitely had lots of reactions right about where we're at now, about 318. So I think that is a key level there, 318-ish. But the Nasdaq futures has a little more upside to the top of its range. So that tells me that triple Qs could likely push up to about that 319-ish. And that would be the next resistance level. So until we get a definitive break up or down, it's anybody's game still. And, look, here's the thing. Today, the bulls, and you'll see it in the comments, they're going to come out. Everything's bullish. Everything's great because the price action is up. However, you didn't hear that from them yesterday or the day before. And that's because the price action was down. Yesterday, the day before, look, big sell-off, all right? You didn't hear that price. You won't hear that in the comments on days like that. And then on days like this, they'll come out, pound their chest. So that's just the nature of it. But it doesn't mean that just because today is up, that tomorrow won't be down. All right? That's the point that I'm trying to get at. So that's again, we're still range bound. Let's look at these charts. There's these FANG stocks because that's really what the market's trading on right now is pretty much all FANG. Okay, so Microsoft, something I want to point out here. So Microsoft, obviously, there's a couple things going on here. I just want to kind of point it out. And, I can't make a definitive decision on where things are going. I have a good idea, but doesn't mean I'm going to be right. Microsoft here. So the former high in the ongoing bear market was right here. This was a nice definitive kind of high right there on back in August of 2022. That level was about 293.91. We gapped up right there. Today they are ramping that up. So in the short term, that's bullish to me to see that breaking above that former high, setting in that former high. Now the day's not over yet, so we'll keep an eye on how the day closes. The other thing I want to point out, and it's kind of a bigger pattern, if I roll out on the daily, I've got these reactions. This was a pretty defined uptrend line coming all the way back to 2016. And I've got all these reactions marked out where we hit this trend line, kind of a definitive trend line. You can see we had it there. We hit it again here in 2019. There's the COVID lows where we hit it again. It held support, so that's at least 3 reactions to define that clean trend line. And then if I roll out, you can see we've got more reactions here, here, here. Okay, they even hit it right there, rallied there, and then finally it broke, and you had a gap down. If I zoom in, I can kind of show that to you. Grab the right tool. All right, right in here, it broke, it gapped down, it broke, and you had kind of a sell signal, a larger sell signal, and that came September of 2022. If I zoom out, coming back into where we're at now, you can see that we basically are ramping into that level as key resistance. Okay, so there was a lot of reactions on that trend line. I know today feels bullish because we're rallying, but Microsoft is rallying into a major level of resistance, big level of resistance. So take that for what it's worth. It's doing it also with negative divergence. That divergence remains intact. So we are, essentially this price action today is just another divergent high. Okay, so that's what I have on Microsoft. We'll see how, we'll see if we get some sort of a reaction at this resistance level. And if this does prove to be the top, I think it could for sure. And again, we got to get through earnings season. That's kind of the key. Right now they're pumping these FANGs and everything's kind of being pumped into these earnings. I don't see anything technically really changing though. Going back to the triple Qs, and then especially the NASDAQ futures, we're still just range bound. All right, we're still within this range. This is a range that's been in place for over a month, and we're still in it. So nothing's changed there. Let's look at Apple because obviously Apple's coming up, and Apple has the weighting to pretty much tank the market. If Apple has bad earnings, and they don't usually have bad earnings, like I said, they're pretty good at engineering their earnings to beat expectations. Doesn't mean the market is going to buy it though. We might see this kind of rallying going on up until Apple, and then after Apple clears out, the sellers come in. It's always possible. Apple on the daily chart, here's your bear market that Apple's been in, and it's been, it's not to the bulls, it probably doesn't feel like much of a bear market, especially where we're at right now, because the all-time highs are right here, and we're down about 9% from those all-time highs. So yeah, they if they've been holding this through this entire thing, right now they feel like, almost going to get my money back or even profitable, depends on where they've been buying it at. But technically, we have continued to make a series of lower highs. Okay, there's a lower high, there's a lower high, there's a lower high, there's a lower high, and this is where we're trading at right now. We're right there at that major resistance. Now, if we start to break out, maybe after earnings, and if it can break out and start to hold above this trend line, maybe break out, back test, something like that, and hold, and then start to run, then that's going to be bullish. There's no way to spin that other than bullish, and at that point, it really does put my continued bear market thesis into question. All right, but that hasn't happened yet. So in general, technically nothing's changed. We're at major resistance in an ongoing bear market in Apple, and there is no technical change. So we'll see how earnings plays out, obviously. Amazon, that's the one that reports after the bell today. So a couple things. So I have this reversal candlestick right here on Amazon where they're starting to trade up into that candlestick. It's not really out of the question to see things trade into a reversal candlestick. Usually you just don't want to take out the top, all right? You take out the top of the candle, which is basically right there up at 112.89. Then it really kind of voids that candle, and it can't really be considered as a topping candlestick. But to see it trade into the candle, halfway into the candle or so, that's pretty common. So we'll see how that goes today, and then after the bell, we have earnings. We also have this potential downtrend line. It's not my favorite, all right? And it's only because I can't really make a clean downtrend. I've got a couple I've got the high here. I've got, I can basically adjust this any way I want. If I move it up like that, then maybe that's the downtrend line. If I have it down here, that's the downtrend line. It's just not that clean. I'd need probably another reaction to really determine where this downtrend line is. So as of right now, I'm really just looking at this candle, all right, as my topping stick. So I don't want to see Amazon trade much above that. Really, I don't want to see it go above 113. It can go up to 113. I don't really want to see it trading much above that. There should be resistance there. And that would be a daily close, all right? They could pop it intraday, but ultimately a daily close above that 113 really kind of voids out that candle as a topping stick. So that's what I'll be looking for. Until I see that, there's really technically nothing has changed in Amazon. Google, kind of just bouncing today with the rest of the fangs. We still have that negative divergence. Maybe they're going to run it up, make a new divergent high. But again, this is all price action that is expected during earnings week. Choppy, volatile price action is expected. We still have negative divergence. All right, so if they pop it up and make a new high, it's going to be a divergent high. I think it will very likely get sold into. So this doesn't change anything. We run up and then we come down. Everybody's going to be bearish on the way down. So I'm not letting the day-to-day price action dictate my longer-term technicals. I'm really just relying on the charts. And when those change, then we'll have to change our strategy. But as of right now, I don't see any real changes, and that's what I'm going with for right now. Let's look at SOXX, and here's another thing. Semiconductors today, even though the FANGs were up, the large caps, semis were selling down. So we did hit some support, okay, and I pointed this out to the private member group. All right, look, you got a reaction here, reaction there, reaction there. There's another one, and we hit that support today. So, I think we get a bounce here. Probably get a bounce. It would make sense. And then the next sell signal on this one would probably come on a break of this 398.50 area. All right, you start to break that, then that's your next sell signal. You probably head down to the 200-day moving average. Otherwise, you bounce, and I don't know how far the bounce will go. Okay, I think it could bounce up to 417 or so. Something like that, maybe even do a back test. Ultimately, we'll look at areas of resistance. Right now, I think there's some resistance right there at about 400 up to, let's see here, I have to narrow it down on the hourly. Right in there, looks like that, this was kind of former support right in there. So I think you could bounce up to about 418-ish, 417, 418. We'll look for that to hold as a bounce target, and then ultimately a break would be of this 398.50 would be your next sell signal. So if you're looking to short, you short at resistance, or you short on a break of support. Anything in between, doesn't make sense to short. So just for a tactical trade, I did cover my short today as this was selling down. So this was profitable, and AVGO was another one selling down today. Again, look, coming in, we filled this gap, or they stepped in a little early, but there was this gap right here at about 601.50. And I covered my short trade on that one as we were entering that gap because I saw that semis were hitting support. So it looked like that was, this was likely going to be at support too, especially filling that gap. So you get a bounce, and so far we've had that bounce. So maybe a little more, maybe not. All right. Next sell signal would probably come on a break of 601.50 for that one. And I do think we will get it. I do think we're going to get more downside Just, it just is timing. When does it happen? Do we bounce here and then break? Okay, nobody really knows that. Nvidia, I did not cover this one. I am still short Nvidia. This still looks pretty soft to me, to be honest. And I don't, here's the thing. We've got this bearish rising wedge there. We've just been kind of trading sideways, but it still looks like it's kind of a topping pattern. So I like it. I'm still short this. We have negative divergence, everything I'm looking for. So I'm still staying short on that one, and I will look to potentially add if we start to roll over, start to get the price action rolling over, which is what I am expecting. We likely are just going to hang out until we clear Apple out of the way. Once Apple's out of the way, the tech stocks are going to pick a direction. I believe it to be down. The technicals tell me it's going to be down. And we just got to get through this week and, maybe a little bit of next week. Okay, LLY. This is a healthcare stock. It's kind of been on a tear, but I think we're running into major resistance. Here's the thing. This is the trend line we got on the daily support. We have a reaction there and a reaction there. So it's not my favorite trend line, but we did test it from below. All right, right here. There's another reaction. And then we had another reaction here. And we're kind of into this choppy trading action now. It looks like earnings is now out of the way. And they gapped it up on earnings, but look, they're selling into it. All right, so this has run into major resistance. Earnings is now out of the way. I think it's an objective short here, to be honest. The one thing I don't have negative divergence on the daily PPO. It's just not quite there. I do have it on the RSI. It's just starting to show up. It's kind of right there. And if I go down to the hourly, I clearly have it on both. Okay, you can see divergent highs there, negative divergence on the hourly. So yeah, I think we're kind of at a topping pattern here, and this looks like major resistance. So it's an objective short. There's a trade idea for you. Oh, just one thing. What you could do, another way to trade this, on the hourly chart, you have this uptrend line right here. All right, this is the hourly. You could wait for a break of that. All right, if you waited for a break of that, that's the conservative trade. So you can, you're at resistance now, or you could wait for a break of the kind of minor support there on the hourly for the sell signal. Okay, and then Meta, we'll look at that one. That one is, they reported earnings, so earnings clearly out of the way. So resistance levels, all right, we have the downtrend line here. All right, now, yes, I only have 2 reactions on the daily chart. If I go to the weekly, there's a couple more kind of weeks where we basically have a little bit more validation of that trend line. And we're clearly above that now. So that's bullish in general. The day's not over, though, and this is a daily chart, so we'll see how that kind of trades out. I don't know if it's going to sell off into the close. Maybe it does. We also have horizontal price resistance and this big gap to fill right here. That's about 246, we'll call it, somewhere right in there. And we're just below that now. So I don't know. They could rally into the gap. I could easily see that. In general, this is a divergent high. We have negative divergence. We had this pattern here. It did break this bearish rising wedge pattern. I think that's still, to me, this looks like an overshoot. All right. We broke down out of this pattern to the downside just before earnings. So that's, when you see breakdowns that happen right before earnings, you definitely want to be suspicious about those. And then sure enough, earnings come out and they ramp it up. It's short squeezing, basically. Any people that took the breakdown, squeezing them. And so I took a short on this yesterday after the close, or after hours, after they had pumped this thing up. I grabbed it around 230, right around 230. Now, so obviously down slightly on that. It's a starting short position for me. So it's down about 3% on my starting short position. I'm not going to add to it most likely until I see a break of this support line right here. All right, so I want to see this come down and then ultimately break with a sell signal, and that's what I will add to the short trade. Okay, if I don't see that, then we'll, and it wants to continue to ramp up, I'll look to stop out. Because obviously there's this gap to fill potentially. So if they want to, they could ramp it up and just continue to run up and fill the gap. It's possible. I won't be short riding that gap fill if that happens. So that is that one. And just to wrap this one up, we'll go back to the NASDAQ futures. You can see they're clearly just ramping this thing up into resistance right there, 13,206. So I think it's very likely it's just a little more upside to hit that resistance. There's a ton of reactions up there, so it's big resistance. You might have a little bit of a breakout, but any kind of breakout that you see that happens today, I would take with with a grain of salt, because you have Amazon earnings after the close, and then we have Apple earnings next week, and those two, especially Apple, has the power and the weighting essentially to tank the market. So don't assume just because of these FANG stocks, some of them have been beating expectations, which is all basically a ruse. Don't expect that Apple is going to do the same, or the market is going to continue to have the same reaction. All right, we might just be in this kind of this pump that it's been going on during the earnings season. As soon as earnings are up, meaning Apple has reported, the sellers come out and say it's time to take profit in these tech stocks. So nothing's changed from my technical perspective. I'm going to get the video out, and I'll